Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are. Whatever your time zone, welcome. This is Digital Transformation Talk, and I am your host, Kevin Crane. Welcome to the show. Today, we will be discussing the topic of the transformed and tech driven HR function, human resources. Now, digital transformation in human resources is critical for several reasons. First, it enhances efficiency by automating repetitive tasks like payroll processing and data entry, freeing up HR professionals to focus on more strategic initiatives and activities. Second, it improves employee experience through self service portals, mobile apps, and AI driven chatbots, which can lead to higher engagement and retention rates. Third, it enables decision making that is boosted by real time analytics on workforce trends, performance metrics, and talent acquisition strategies. Now, automating HR processes can bring significant benefits, but it also comes with a set of challenges we should consider. The first one is data security and privacy. HR deals with sensitive employee data like personal information, performance reviews, salary details, and ensuring data security and compliance with privacy regulations like GDPR or CCPA is crucial, but challenging when automating HR functions. Another challenge is integration with legacy systems. Many companies still use legacy HR systems that may not easily integrate with modern automation tools, and this can lead to compatibility issues that require additional effort for seamless integration. Another constraint or challenge is the complexity, simply the complexity of HR processes. HR processes can be complex, involve multiple stakeholders and intricate workflows, and automating these processes requires careful planning, customization, and testing to ensure that they work smoothly. There are other issues to consider as well. There are risks of algorithm bias in AI. This can lead to unfair decisions in areas like recruitment, performance evaluation, and promotions if not addressed effectively. The cost of implementation can be high, especially for small and medium-sized businesses, because it requires maybe an investment in software and training and possibly hiring specialized personnel. And overall, really maintaining a human touch can be a challenge. While automating streamlines many tasks, finding the right balance between automation and human interaction is key. So, addressing these challenges requires a strategic approach involving collaboration between HR professionals, IT teams, and senior management to ensure successful implementation and ongoing optimization of automated HR processes. But how do you do it? Well, that's what we're here today discussing with two great guests. Hopefully, two great guests. If Jill is with us today, we will find out in a moment. But before we get into all that, I do want to say, as always, we want to hear from you too. I'd like to encourage everyone attending today to participate. So please join in with your comments in the chat section. And if you have a question along the way, please feel free to jump in. I will attempt to get some of your questions and comments into the flow of the show today. And we'll also have a few minutes at the end for your presentations, for your questions. All right. All right. Let's bring aboard our guest today, starting with Jill Shepard. We're having some technical difficulties with Jill, so I'm hoping Jill is with us today. Jill, are you with us? Hello, hello. Jill, are you with us? I can see Jill, but I cannot hear Jill. Jill is the practice director for digital transformation at QA Limited, where she works to bridge the gap between uh, technology and transformation. Jill, can you hear us? All right. Jill is with us, but we have no audio for Jill. I will leave that to our producers in the background to sort out while I bring aboard John Stoddard. John, are you with us? Hello,
Yeah.
John.
Hello. How are you?
Ah, hello, John. Great to hear you. Great to see you. John is Business Development Director for Excelsis Limited. Now, John, you've been working in B2B cloud software for many years, but for the last decade, you've been specializing in new markets. But before all that, a little known fact about you is that you had a job taking pictures of horses' feet. Tell me, taking pictures of horses' feet. Tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah, well, I was an army officer, and then I went back to university to do a master's in my late 20s. And my first job was working in medical imaging. So I worked for a very large multinational German company. Uh, and after quite a few years there, I went to a startup that was a veterinary imaging MRI company taking pictures of expensive horses' hooves, the inside. So that's where taking pictures of horses' feet come from.
All right. Well, that's a rather interesting way to start your career. Well, all right. Well, perhaps next time you're on, we could talk more, and you could bring in some of those photographs. I'd be interested.
Yeah. If
What
you
do you
spent
think?
$5 million on a horse, you want to know why it's gone lame.
That's right. That's right. These horses are huge investments. All right. Well, very good.
Yeah.
All right. Um, I believe that we are having some difficulty bringing Jill in, so we are going to move forward, John, and hopefully Jill will be able to join us as we resolve the technical issues with Jill's connectivity. So, John, thank you for being so brave to jump in and soldier on with me today. Uh, I'd like to bring our attention to a news item published recently by HR Grapevine titled "Is HR equipped to cope with the demands of the digital future?" And in the article, according to Forrester, digital transformation is a priority for 87% of senior HR executives, but and 27% say that they feel that their survival relies upon it. But just 15% of the surveyed companies have prioritized digital transformation, and just 44% believe that they are prepared. John, from your point of view, is HR as a discipline prepared for a digital future, or is this article just being dramatic?
Yeah, I think it's being a little dramatic. I still meet companies that are depending on the likes of Excel to run their HR. They're becoming fewer and fewer, and then old HR platforms really just were sort of on premise and were and didn't allow any connectivity out to employees. So it was really a tool for HR. So I think there are two things for me that stand out with this. One, that modern HR systems are really good to let people, they involve apps and people have them on their smartphones, so there's a lot of interaction possible with everyone involved. And the other one is young people joining the workplace now have a much greater expectation of connectivity across all functions of their life, be that their home life, their work life, all the different functions. So yeah, I think there is a growing expectation that much more connected functionality will be available from HR, which sometimes I feel is a bit of the sort of the one of the last places to get dedicated modern systems.
I wonder why. Why do you feel that it seems that HR may be a bit behind the curve in terms of digitization? Is it simply because of the cost of implementation and a lack of focus on HR as a priority in terms of digital transformation? What are your thoughts on that?
My perception is often HR is seen as a cost center rather than a profit center. So, it just comes lower down on the priority list in terms of revenue generating activity.
I suppose that's so. And, we've heard this same sort of constraint in other functions where it's really, if you're not a profit center, you seem to be lower on the list in terms of the implementation of new systems and tech. All right. Well, 27% feel that their survival relies upon it. These are HR senior execs. Do you feel that that is an accurate fear in terms of HR execs feeling that their survival relies upon it?
Yeah, well, I do. I think, sort of it's becoming more and more difficult to recruit good people. And so you've got to have good systems to both identify, recruit, and keep these people within the business. So there's certainly that side to it, because a lot of people entering the sort of workplace now are very aware of how easy it is to find work in other places. So this
Mhm.
this ability, the sort of ability to use recruitment platforms to find alternative work if the one that you find isn't suitable, then you've really got to provide a really good workplace, and HR is really important as far as that's concerned.
Well, I can tell you I have some personal experience with this because I have a son that has recently graduated college and is now out looking for work. And I got to tell you, the process that people need to go through to apply for jobs, just applying for a job,
Mm.
much less working through the process, is rather abysmal in many cases. The process is full of errors and full of arcane systems that can be very frustrating and has been very frustrating for my son entering the workforce. So I'll be interested to see where things head in the next year or so with respect to the digitization and the automation and improvement of the HR process in terms of onboarding itself. All right. Well, John, let's get into our main body of discussion today. Our first discussion point is how AI is reshaping the traditional HR process. Um, John, in what ways do you see AI currently being used in HR, and can you give us some examples of success in the application of AI in HR?
Yeah, sure. I was just thinking about how you sort of introduced the whole webinar, and thought it was really pretty spot on, um, in that the sort of low hanging fruit is going to be sort of large data processing, and support the building. Chat GPT-5 is going to allow you to build very specified chat bots for your own business. So employees will find it much easier to get support, really good sort of tailored support. Plus, also for sort of large data processing, an AI engine is going to be able to scan through piles of CVs much faster than a person will be able to do it. And if you're looking at something like sentiment analysis, adding on to that, the AI will really be able to sort of dig into a CV and find skills and attitudes and approaches within that that aren't sort of that wouldn't sort of 2 years ago, 5 years ago, you would have to parse the CV, and you'd be looking for words. An AI engine will be able to do that with much more accuracy and subtlety that was previously possible. Sort of,
Indeed.
sorry.
Indeed, I know that many young folks now today. In fact, one recommendation that I've heard recently is, again, I've been working with my son, is in your CV to put keywords in the foot
Yeah.
of your CV in white ink. They're there, but they're in white, so you don't read them as a human, but the AI bot will see
Oh,
those keywords.
that's an old trick from about sort of 10 years ago when people
Is
were
it an old tale?
trying to change their Google ranking. You used to hide a whole load of words sort of underneath the fold. So there's that, but actually sort of within the CV itself, within the text, an AI will be able to identify skills and attitudes and approaches that weren't previously there. And you'll be able to. So the AI will also sort of scan a whole range of CVs and then prioritize them, and recruitment managers will be able to give their idealized profile and sort of mark what's more important than the other. But it'll also be able to do subtle things, and that'll be along the lines of, if you find somebody who is very strong in this particular area, then I'll allow you to have lower scores in other areas. So you'll start to see rankings based on not just a simple ideal profile, but a more subtle way of finding the sort of diamonds within the mass, that are people that are sort of slightly quirky, slightly outside the ideal profile, but actually could be really, really good employees.
I'm wondering how this plays out in the real world today. Look, we think about AI in hiring, this transition of using AI in the hiring process, I can see the benefits, but there are some downsides that I think are important to consider, and I'm not fully sure how all this works with respect to bias in AI algorithms. It seems to me like we're using AI to identify employees and transitioning from humans to AI, there is a risk of algorithm bias and can lead to unfair decisions in areas like recruitment, and even when employees are on board, could lead to unfair decisions in terms of performance evaluation and promotions if not addressed effectively. What is your take on bias in AI in HR, and what should we do about it?
I think it's an incredibly interesting sector. So it's not just in recruitment, it's probably in promotion as well, in that we'll start to use AI algorithms to find the best candidates for promotion. And and in some ways it's quite contradictory. The algorithms will be more objective in that they will rank people against very specific targets, against very specific defined rules that are set. So in some ways, they're much more objective and less subjective than having a human being just rank people and employ the ones or promote the ones that they like. What, like you said, the inherent bias is where you are going to find difficulty. I'm now working with sort of in Singapore, that where this sort of bias, where this bias is being examined most or earliest in business is in the financial services sector, mainly because they have a lot of money and their regulators fine them an awful lot if they do things wrong. So they've got a really big incentive to get this right. So there is technology coming online now in the financial services sector, which will sort of open up the black box of an AI algorithm and will explicitly lay out why you were offered a particular product at a particular rate. Because if you and your next door neighbor are both going for mortgages and you get offered a rate 5% lower than your neighbor, there's a question mark as to why it is the rates are different, and you may put in a complaint about that. So I think this being able to explode the black boxes of AI algorithm rules and show them explicitly why a particular action was offered or why a rate was done, that will then in time be brought over into HR platforms that use these type of decision-making engines, and you'll be able to say, we offered this person a job and not this person a job for the following reasons. And it'll give those very explicitly.
Hi, it's Jill here. I don't know if you can hear me now. I'm on the phone.
Oh, Jill is with us. Oh, Jill, welcome aboard. We're now joined by Jill Shepard, Practice Director at Digital Transformation at QA Limited. Jill, welcome aboard. You are with us coming from the great beyond.
I'm afraid so. I don't know why the technology worked yesterday and not today. One of those things, I guess. But I gather you were talking about the use cases that John was talking about.
Yes, indeed, Jill. We've been talking about the how AI is reshaping traditional HR processes. I would love to get your take on this as well. We talked about the article, Is HR Equipped to Cope with the Demands of the Digital Future? And we've been talking about using AI for employee onboarding and some of the aspects that will shape the future of AI or future of HR. What is your take on all of this? And I guess my question is to you, should HR professionals be fearful of their jobs? What are your thoughts on the future of HR with respect to automation and AI?
I'd say rather than be fearful of their jobs, I think they should be fearful of not learning about AI. I've taken to buy myself a notebook and some posh pens, and I'm making myself learn about AI for 30 minutes every day, and I think that's been really productive. We live in a world of a distraction economy where we can either be very scared about the things that pass us by in LinkedIn or scared about some headline news. And if you sit and seek to understand AI, it surprised me as a non-technical person, so in a very similar environment to those that HR staff might find themselves in, how much you can understand. I quite like the Accenture concept of being net better off with AI, and I think if HR professionals can think about how can we present AI in a way that allows the staff that we work with to think about how they will be net better off and how we will be net better off. And people talk about there needs to be a lot of transparency, and I think that's what John was referring to, that being transparent about why AI might have recommended you for a job or not. There's a lot to be said about unpacking the technology. It's very, very different technology from that which has gone before, and I think HR people will probably be able to understand it more easily than maybe the technicalities of the cloud, because it works like our brains, which should be something that HR people can probably relate to more easily than some of the tech that's gone before.
All right, very good. Well, I'd like to move us on now because our time is starting to run. We always run short of time on this show. I'd like to move us on to our next discussion topic, and that is protecting sensitive employee data in the AI-enabled era. Now, look, HR, as I mentioned in my introduction, deals with sensitive employee data like personal information, performance reviews, salary details, and ensuring the data security of this information is critical. When it comes to this aspect of it, what data really is at risk? Are there some steps that we should take to protect that data? And if so, what are those? And Jill, what is your thought on that?
I think this is where HR professionals need to lean into their cybersecurity specialists and their tech specialists. They need to know where their limits lie, because of course you are dealing with hugely sensitive information, and they need to treat it as importantly as you would client and customer information, because this is as personal information as it gets. So just as especially when there's a cyber attack on a mobile phone company and data gets released, or a financial services company. Companies take this sort of data release extremely seriously, and of course it has lots of legal implications. And for me, HR need to do the same. They need to understand the technology sufficiently to understand what the risks are, and to really have very healthy conversations with the technical specialists, and be not scared to ask questions about unpacking some of the jargon if they don't understand it. Keep asking for that very technical language to be talked about in everyday terms. Again, I've come a long way since over the last few years understanding digital transformation, and I can remember a colleague of mine saying, do not ever start a sentence, Jill, with "you are not technical." You are technical because you're asking the right questions, and they might sound stupid ones, and you might feel stupid asking them. So I would really encourage HR people to never think that the question is stupid, and to keep asking a technical person about an answer they give, because they want to share their technology. They love people to be curious. So the more curious you can be, the more open-minded you can be, then when these incidents do occur, you're in a good partnership position with those people to manage that problem very actively and proactively and transparently. But it has to be done with the sensitivity that you would manage external client and customer data.
Still, John, you were shaking your head. Yes. No, I'm curious about your thoughts on this, John, because we were just talking about how HR may not be on the top of the list when it comes to digital transformation and the support and the technologies that we need to innovate. HR is regarded as a cost center, not a profit center. And yet we have this very sensitive data, and protecting employee data is critical. What are some steps that HR should specifically take, and things that that HR professionals should be specifically looking for and advocating for in technology to ensure that their employee data is protected?
Sure. Most good new HR platforms, all the data within it is encrypted. So even if the system was to be hacked, nobody would be able to read any sensitive data held within it. And when I say, so that is encrypted at rest within the database, but also encrypted in transit. So that's when information is flying down to your smartphone and you're appearing on your app, wherever the system could potentially be broken, then it's just gobbledygook. It's not anything that anyone could make sense of. The other thing that I would say is to compartmentalize, and that is within an organization when you're sort of implementing a system. Don't let everybody see everything all the time. Let managers see the people who are within their department. HR will see everybody. Not everybody has to have that global view of everything. And the more you compartmentalize, you reduce the chance of bad actors getting access to information that they shouldn't really see. And as a last one, the most locked down part of an HR system is generally the disciplinary actions, where somebody is going through a disciplinary process, and that's the fewest amount of people should have access to something like that, because that's incredibly sensitive and personal, and should be seen by the fewest number of people within an organization.
These are all great recommendations. It seems, however, that even the most tech-savvy organizations get hacked all the time.
Yep.
What did I read just this week? That Roku got hacked. Facebook was hacked just in the last week or so. So even companies that have a great deal of infrastructure and capability when it comes to data management are still getting hacked. So as an HR professional, I'm wondering what happens, what should we do? What happens if we have a breach? Jill, what are your thoughts on our actions when and if, or eventually when we do become hacked or there is a breach of some kind? what steps should we do then?
You should be very much prepared for it and have plans to cope with it. And then you should be very much contacting the individuals who are involved. Often not everybody will be involved in this sort of situation, and companies will know exactly which records have been leaked. And to reassure people, all the language that John just used was very easy to understand language, the language and the meaning of it, because he was careful with the words that he used and how he explained it. And if you can communicate in that way, you can reassure people a good deal. But if you know that particular people's data, for whatever reason, is more at risk than other people's, then go talk to those people on a personal level. What you don't want is escalated panic and rumours to take over from facts. And if good people can be practiced in how that they communicate effectively in these sorts of situations before they've happened, then they will be very effective when it does happen. And communication has to be key. It has to be key with the right people, without using jargon, with a clarity to avoid panic and to be totally transparent. And John's way of presenting the various ways in which you could prevent it happening could be used to communicate if bad things did happen and to calm things down.
Yeah.
John, do you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the other thing that I was just thinking of is, there is a thing just now where even if your data is encrypted and nobody can read anything, the cyber world is full of people that will steal your data and hold it for ransom. So even if they can't read it, they will take it away from you and try and get you to pay to have it back. So in that circumstance, I would always say, have a good backup. Have good data hygiene, in that you have your database backed up as a mirror somewhere else, so that if somebody steals your data, you can change all your passwords, harden things up, and reinstall things. It is, cyber criminals are criminals, and they are there to cause as much damage and make themselves as much money as possible.
And for me, what's fascinating about that sort of insight is that you started off by saying HR can be a laggard in transformation, but it has such enormous power in being an early adopter, because it can role model to the rest of the organization how it's done. It's a trusted part of the organization, or should be. And if it can show people how to communicate effectively about technology, how data can be managed securely, how there are backups so you wouldn't be subject to paying a ransom fee or be fearful, then people will then accelerate transformation in their own parts of the business. So HR is responsible for accelerating responsible transformation across the business, not just because it's the right thing to do for HR, but because then they can take that active role of helping the rest of the organisation transform in a way that's responsible, performative, and even diverse.
All right. We are here today. This is Digital Transformation Talk. We are here today with Jill Shepard, Practice Director of Digital Transformation at QA Limited, and also John Stoddard, Business Development Director at Celsius Limited. We are talking about the transformed and tech-driven HR function. And Jill and John, I'd like to move us on to our third discussion point today, which I think is super critical, and that is maintaining the human touch in HR amid automation and AI. I'm curious if you can give me some examples of ways that organizations today are successful at blending human and AI together in the HR process. John, how do you do that?
Use the technology to do the heavy lifting, and use it sort of in a clever way. For example, on onboarding, a lot of organizations will have a process, a learning that has to go on for somebody to be onboarded into an organization. But not everybody learns the same way. So you can use AI to deliver the same sort of syllabus, information delivery, either written or by video or orally, sort of to listenable, so that you're actually providing a more tailored experience for people that suits better the way that their learning style. The other thing that really jumps out in this is that AI can do an awful lot of the hard work very quickly, the sort of grunt work, and that actually releases time of HR professionals to do face-to-face work. And it's allowing people to actually sit in front of HR professionals and deal with very sensitive issues, and having that capacity to do that. You know, there was, I think, post-COVID, we definitely saw a need for more face-to-face time with HR professionals, because people had a difficult time, and it was, you know, you have to provide more of that face-to-face support, and this is a great way of doing it.
I'd add to that.
Go ahead, Jill. Sorry, I interrupted. Go ahead.
I would add to that HR have a role in AI and the human touch beyond the automated processes in generative AI. You know, as generative AI takes hold, there are going to be different adoption personas in the broader business. And if HR think of themselves as having a strategic role and looking into talent management, then all that time liberated from automating processes can be used to help that talent get its head around how it can use LLMs to make their work more interesting, more innovative, how a particular organization's use of generative AI can give it competitive advantage. There's quite a lot going around at the moment about how will organizations gain, yes, efficiency out of automating processes, but gain something unique, something sustainable, some competitive advantage, something unimitable out of generative AI. And that's where HR could come into its own strategically if it helps people learn how to use AI and sits and watches and observes them. You know, something said to me, which I thought was fascinating, that if you took every single question that somebody asked Copilot to do, then you would have what makes their learning organization and what makes their talent. What is it that they want to know? Why do they want to know that? And so HR could use all that liberated time to take on that real strategic role of helping talent understand generative AI and analyze what it is they're using generative AI to do, and see what's happening at the edges of the organization. What are people wanting generative AI to do and not do? And what does that say about the future of that organization and where it's pushing its boundaries, which I think is a really exciting role for HR.
I'm wondering if all of this really happens, though. I'm a little skeptical, I must say. Generally, when we talk about AI and process automation, one of the benefits that is almost always brought up is the fact that, look, we can free up employees from sort of mundane, frontline, redundant activities, and then redeploy them in areas where they can be higher value, higher touch, more knowledge leadership sort of roles. But I'm wondering if that really happens in especially large organizations. Like, if I automate my HR processes, I use AI to help on board, I do a bunch of things that are digitizing the process. Do I really redeploy those employees in higher value areas, or are they simply let go and then they're just not part of my workforce anymore? I'm curious the percentage of employees that really are repurposed that way, or whether that's sort of what is that? A straw man argument about automation of what was a human activity with something like AI or process automation. Can you, Jill and John, can you give me an example of one organization that did just that, that redeployed employees in new ways as a result of their functions being automated?
I have some examples. I'm not sure whether I'm commercial and at that liberty to say, but in my organisation, we do a lot of reskilling of people whose roles have been automated, and even to the point where you get some of those frontline workers saying to their middle managers, which I found fascinating, in one financial services company, where it was the frontline workers putting their hands up and saying, we can see more automation possible than you're allowing us to adopt. Admittedly, this was not in HR. And you middle managers are stopping us. And yet we want more automation because we know it would take the robot out of our job and then we could do some more sophisticated work. So maybe that, I haven't got an HR example of that, but I have got examples where people who are a little bit bored and can see the potential of automation screaming out for more of it. Maybe not all of them, and maybe I think that's where personas come in. Can you divide your, and maybe this is where HR can have a role, can you as HR people look at your workforce and see where people are scared of automation and will maybe resist it or worry about it? Your employee value proposition will suffer as a result. Are there leading edge people who can see automation everywhere they look and whose realism maybe needs to be either tempered or helped with some implementation agendas? And are there some people in the middle? I just don't think that people adopt automation or adopt generative AI in the same ways, and therefore you need to have to attend to these individual profiles of how people will do this. But yes, I absolutely think it's very possible for, and I have seen it, organizations automate and liberate people. But I also think in the next 5 to 6 years, we will see a lot of companies making the wrong decisions and regretting it and rehiring people, and some people nailing it. And it will be interesting to see who gets it right and wrong.
Yeah.
Well, to me, that's where HR can lead the way, putting the human part into human resources. No one else will advocate for the human aspects of the organization better than human resources itself. Do you agree, John?
Yeah, I mean, I was just thinking as Joe was speaking there, you know, as you automate sort of routine tasks, you've got people that are experienced. You know, they might have been in the organization for 5 years, something like that. They'll be able to take on this extra more, you know, the stuff where it takes a bit of experience and it's, you know, at the edges of what they used to do previously. What I would feel very sorry for, and companies will have to be very cognizant of, is it's the people just joining organizations that haven't built up that experience, won't be able to make that leap into being the person that can give sort of more detailed answers. So companies will have to be very careful about sort of getting rid of the sort of entry-level jobs, because that's where their middle experienced people are coming from in 5 years' time. You know, if we don't give experience to the experience of entry-level jobs, so people don't build up the detailed knowledge of these processes, and they won't be able to advise so well.
All right.
Yeah, I think there's some fascinating, nuances like that.
Yeah.
Another
All
one
right,
is
Jill and John.
Oh, sorry.
I'm sorry, we are so short of time here, Jill and John. We only have about 60 seconds left. In our time remaining, I'm wondering if you could please provide us with one quick action item that our listeners and viewers can use to take advantage of the ideas and advice today? Jill, do you have an action item for us?
My action item would be not to be scared about learning about these things yourself. Don't wait for somebody else to teach you about automation or about generative AI. Just start to do it yourself so that you gain confidence, so that the moment your organization puts you in a situation where you need to have a conversation about it, you've got that base level. And it'll be easier and it'll be more exciting than you think it will be.
All right, that is Jill Shepard from QA Limited. You can find her at qa.com. Thank you, Jill, for being with us today. John, do you have an action item for us today?
Yeah, learn how to write good prompts for things like ChatGPT. ChatGPT, it looks at the whole world, it looks at the whole internet. The more clever a prompt you write, the more accurate the area that ChatGPT will look at. So learn how to do that. And like Jill, just go and play around with it. It's really good fun.
All right, that is John Stoddard, Business Development Director for Excelsis. Jill and John, thank you so much for being with us today. Your perspectives and advice were spot on. Thank you so much. I hope that we'll get a chance to talk again soon. And to everyone joining us today, thank you too. Join us again next week on April 23rd when we have another great panel of guests talking about using AI to help process automation reach peak efficiency. That should be another great session. In the meantime, if you'd like to connect with me, you can do so on LinkedIn. I'm happy to connect there. Check me out. I'm Kevin Crane. And check out my weekly audio podcast, the Digital Transformation Podcast. But for now, that'll do it for this episode of Digital Transformation Talk. And until next time, I am Kevin Crane saying thank you for watching.